Good morning, True Spirit. This is the day the Lord has made. Let's just rejoice and be glad in it. Amen. This morning, our devotion, I have a scripture myself. I have a song by Deacon Carney and prayer by Deacon McIntyre. Amen.
Amen.
So please join in. Amen. Please stand for the reading of the word, please. Our word this morning has come from a scripture that's very familiar with all of us. Amen?
Amen.
We come from John 15, verses 1 through 8. Amen? The word reads as such. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit of itself, unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I am in him, bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. Amen. I read to you John 15, verses 1 through 5. Lord, bless the hearers, readers, and most importantly, the doers of his holy word. You may be seated.
Good morning. Good morning. I remember last week the lady sang, I got to get myself together because I got someplace to go.
Amen.
When I get there, I want to meet there. I hope I meet everybody I know. Well, guess what? I know I got some folk waiting on me, especially Jesus. Let's prepare our minds and hearts to approach the throne of grace. Heavenly Father, we come before you on this day, the day when the world appears to be confused. Pray, Father God, and we know that many people say we're in the last days. We don't know about that, but Father God, it's most important that we know when it was, who it was that made the first day, and who it was that made that day when the Word became flesh and your Son Jesus Christ came upon this earth. We thank you, Father God, for that day when he went upon the cross to redeem our sins, and we thank you for that day when he resurrected and went to sit at your right hand to intercede for all of us. We thank you, Father God. Most of all, we thank you, Father God, for the day for those of us accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior and the pardon of our sins. And we thank you in advance for that day for those who haven't done so, that will do so. And pray, Father God, that there'll be something said or done this day that will guide them in that direction. We thank you, Father God, for our pastor and the First Lady. We thank you for the leadership of this church. And we thank you for the congregation that came here in obedience and in assemblance. We know, Father God, that many times our roads are not easy. And we pray, Father God, for mental, physical, spiritual, and financial healing, protection, and health for each and every family that needs it according to our need and according to thy will, we pray. We pray, Father God, that you'll help True Spirit to carry out its mission and accomplish those things which are currently before us. We pray, we lift up in prayer each and every single one of our youth. We know, Father God, that it wasn't an easy time to be young when we were young, and it's even harder nowadays when our young people are young. But we know, Father God, that you are God and God all by yourself, and that whatever they're confronted with, whether it be in school or in the streets, that you're the one that's in charge. We pray all these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, for the sake of his blood that was spilled for us. Beg you to hear our prayer. Amen.
Easy song. Very easy. I say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, agree. And my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. Sing with me. Will I say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way? I say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. One more time. I say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. Now I got them all to confess.
Amen.
Amen. For your information, Deacon Wright will be our Deacon of the Week. If there's any concerns or issues, please contact him. His name is in the bulletin as well as the program. If you can't get a hold of him, there's 9 other deacons. If you can't get those 9, call the pastor. Amen.
Amen.
That concludes our devotion, and we turn you over to the pulpit.
At this time, we will have our baptism. Any family members who would like to come up to witness up close, please come to the back of the car stand.
Amen. Come on, let's celebrate Jesus this morning. Amen. Let's celebrate baptismal this morning. Amen. The one that's being baptized. How many remember the day that you went in the water? I mean, I can't see you, but you can see me. Lift up your hands and say, I remember the day I went in the water. They used to sing the old song, take me to the water. Take me to the water. Take me to the water to be back. The Bible says that as we are those that believe in God, that we believe in his resurrection, that we too shall be resurrected, because we know that it was after his death he was resurrected. But the Bible tells us that we should allow and we need to let the children come to him, because they have every right to him and access to him, such as you and I. So now we come, we're bringing our young one, Sister Bree, to the water. Mia, oh Lord, to the water. And the preacher used to say when I was coming out, obedience to the great head of the church. And upon the confession of your faith, my sister, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Ghost. Amen. If I'm coming out of the water, she came out of the water, everybody should be standing, because that's one of our children. Grateful that she was willing and wanting to give her life to the Lord. Come on, we can do better than that.
want me to do.
Yes.
I feel all right. Already been to the water.
Yes.
Come on now. All right.
Thank you, Lord.
All right.
Thank you, Lord.
He's good.
Yes, God.
At this time, we'll do responsive reading. I'll be the leader, you'll be the congregation. And this is the church covenant. Amen.
Amen.
Having been led, as we believe, by the Spirit of God to receive the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior, and the profession of our faith, having been baptized in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, we do now, in the presence of God's angel in this assembly, most solemnly, joyfully enter into covenant with one another as one body in Christ.
We engage, therefore, by the aid of the Holy Spirit, to walk together in Christian love, to strive for the advancement of the church in knowledge, holiness, and comfort, to promote its prosperity and spirituality, to sustain its worship, ordinances, discipline, and doctrines, to contribute cheerfully and regularly to the support of the ministry, the expenses of the church, the relief of the poor, and the spread of the gospel through all nations.
We also engage to maintain family and secret devotions, to religiously educate our children, to seek the salvation of our kindreds and acquaintances, to walk circumspectly in the world, to be just in our dealing, faithful in our engagement, exemplary in our deportment, to avoid all tattling, backbiting, excessive anger, to abstain from the sale and use of intoxicating drinks as beverages, and to be serious in the effort to advance the kingdom of our Savior.
We further engage to watch over one another in brotherly love, to remember each other in prayer, to aid each other in sickness and distress, to cultivate Christian sympathy in feeling and courtesy in speech, to be slow to take offense, but always ready for reconciliation, and mindful of the rules of our Savior, to secure it without delay.
We moreover engage that when we move from this place, we will, as soon as possible, unite with some other church where we can carry out the spirit of this covenant and the principle of God's word, all.
And now unto him who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, be power and glory forever. Amen.
Amen. God bless you.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord, everybody. We're going to make one big choir. We're going to give the Lord some praise. And we want everybody to sing along with us. High above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. Give God the highest praise, acknowledging Him always. And all the people say, Halle, Halle, Hallelujah. Halle, Halle, Hallelujah. Halle, Halle, Hallelujah. Halle, Halle, Hallelujah. Let's sing that again. The Lord is high above the heaven,
and His glory above the nation.
and His glory above
I said the Lord is high above the heaven,
the Lord is high above the heavens,
and His glory above the nation.
and His glory above
I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. Give God the highest praise, acknowledging Him always. And all the people say, Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. You know how we do it. Oh, the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heaven, and His glory above the nation. Give God the highest praise, acknowledging Him always. And all the people say, Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Oh, the Lord is high above the heavens, and His glory above the nation. I said the Lord is high above the heavens, and His glory above the nation. Give God the highest praise, acknowledging Him always. And all the people say, Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Let's take it out. Oh, say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. I said, if you love to praise the Lord, say yeah. Oh, if you know to magnify Him, say yeah. Oh, if you love to praise His name, say yeah. Oh, if you love to praise the Lord, say yeah. Oh, say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. I said, if you love to praise the Lord, say yeah. Oh, if you love to praise the Lord, say yeah. Say halle, halle, hallelujah. Oh, if you love to praise the Lord, say yeah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah. Say hallelujah.
Hallelujah. It's prayer time now. We're going to ask that you would all come to the altar. If you have a request that you want to be made known, God has a listening ear. He wants to hear from you. If you have a burden you just want to cast at His feet, you have some sins you just want to ask God to forgive, we ask that you come to the altar at this time. Father, we thank you on this morning. we bless your holy and your righteous name. Lord, we recognize that you are God and you are God alone. Lord, you sit high and you look low. God, you see all things, God. There's nothing that's hidden from you, God. Lord, even the desires of our heart are not hidden from you, God. Lord, we thank you for another day that you have blessed us to see, God. Another day to get it right with you, God. Another day to serve you, God. Another day, God, to be loved by you, God. Lord, we say thank you on this morning, God. We thank you, Lord, that you gave us the use of our limbs and activity of our limbs this morning, God. Lord, we thank you that we were in our right mind this morning, God. There's so many that is not, God. Lord, we thank you that we can come to you, God, and ask for forgiveness of our sin, God. We thank you, Lord, that you forgive us of all of our sin. Lord, your word says we confess our sin. You're faithful and you're just to forgive us from all unrighteousness, God, and cleanse us, God. So, Lord, we need a cleansing today, God. We need a cleansing today, God. Lord, we need to hear from you today, Father. Lord, we pray, God, for this service on today, God. Lord, we pray, God, that the Holy Spirit would rest, rule, and abide, God. Lord, we pray, Lord, no more church as usual, God. That the Holy Spirit will have his way, God. Lord, I pray, God, in the name of Jesus, Lord, that hard hearts will be humbled, God. We pray that those that are hurting, God, that they will be healed, God. Lord, you are a God that heals, God. Lord, you heal us physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, God, financially, God. We're calling on you, God. Somebody here needs a healing today, God. Somebody's going through some things, God, that they don't know how to help themselves, God. They don't see their way through it, God. Lord, it's unbearable, God. They're hopeless, God. They're hopeless, God. They're hopeless, God. They know that the burden is overwhelming, God. Lord, you are a burden bearer, God. You are a heart fixer, God. We crying out to you today, God, because we need you today, God. They need you today, God. Lord, we have prayed, and we have prayed, and we have prayed, and we have cried, God. And Lord, sometimes it feels like you don't hear us, God. But we know you're near, God. Your word tells us that you are, God. You said you never leave us nor forsake us, God. But Lord, we need to know, God. We need your manifestation, God. We need to know, God, that you are with us, God. In the name of Jesus, Lord. Bless those who are in the nursing homes, God. Bless those who are on oxygen, God. Bless those that are on feeding tubes, God. Bless those who have had their limbs amputated, God. Bless those who are dealing with cancer, God. Bless those who are dealing with mental problems, God. Lord, all they need is a touch from you, God. Just a touch will do, God. Just a touch will do, God. Just a touch will do, God. Bless those that are confused in their mind, God. Bless them, Father, in the name. Heal them, deliver them, God. Set them free, Father, in the name of Jesus. Oh, God, we ask that you would look at our children today, God. Oh, God, our children need you like never before, God. Lord, God, we in a generation, God, that the children are raising themselves, God. Lord, they don't know what to do, God. They don't know which way to turn, God. But I pray, God, that you will give them wisdom, God. I pray, Lord, that you will help them and give them courage, God, even in the midst of the trial, God. Satan don't like them. He don't want them to have a relationship with you, God. He don't want them to fulfill the purpose, the plans you have for them, God. And he's going to attack them on every side, God. But you are God, Lord, that will protect them, God. Lord, give them the wisdom. Help them to understand, God, the importance of getting on your word, God. Getting in your word, God. Help them to be obedient to their parents, God. Help them to be obedient to their teachers, God. Help them to resist the devil, God. Help them to recognize the devil in his onset, God. Lord, we thank you, God. We thank you, Lord. We pray for our families, God. Those, God, that are struggling, God. Those women that are being abused, God. Lord, we call forth the women that are being abused, God. Deliver them from these situations, God. That child that's addicted to drugs and alcohol, pornography, God, and all the things of the flesh, God. Deliver our children, God, in the name of Jesus, Lord. Lord, deliver our children from marking up their bodies, God. Deliver them from that spirit of rebellion, God, in the name of Jesus, Lord. Oh, God, we thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord. Bless the word today, God, as it goes forward, God. As the word goes forward today, Lord, we ask that it will go through with power and authority, God. Lord, we ask for a rhema word from on high, God. Lord, we ask for a word that will break up rocks, God. You say your word is like a hammer and it'll break up a rock, God. And so we ask that your word would destroy all the strongholds. Lord, deliver this church from strongholds, God. Deliver, God, from wickedness, God. Deliver us, God, from evil, God. Deliver us, Father, from just rebellion, God. Lord, from control, God. Deliver us from that spirit of control, God. Lord, deliver us, God. Set us free. Let us be led by the Spirit of God, Lord. Let us not continue to walk in the flesh, God. And we thank you, God. We ask that we pray for those that are members here, that are out today, God, for sickness, God. Touch them today, God. Touch their bodies today, God. Heal their bodies today, God. Let them know, God, that you haven't forgot them, God. Let them know, God, that you haven't forgot them, Lord. And we thank you. We thank you, God, for your spirit today, God. We thank you for the Shekinah glory today, God. We thank you, Lord, that you're showing yourself real on our behalf, on your behalf, God. Oh, we thank you, Lord. Lord, clean us up, straighten us up. Lord, build us up, God. Encourage our hearts, God. Oh, God, don't let us go no further, God, until we get it right with you, God. Save somebody today, God. Save somebody today, God. There's somebody that don't know you, God, in the pardon of their sins, God. There's somebody don't understand what it means to be saved, God. They don't understand what it means to be born again. They don't understand the new life, God. They don't understand it, God. Make it clear to them today, God. Open their eyes, God. Open up their understanding, Father, in the name of Jesus. And we are careful to give you all the glory, all the praise, God. And we thank you, Lord, that it is already done. It's already done, God. It's already done, God. And we say thank you. We say thank you, Lord. We say thank you, Lord. Thank you for doing it, God. Thank you for doing it, God. Thank you for hearing us, God. Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for completing anything, God. Thank you for completing the work that you started, God. Oh, God, deliver us. Help us, God. Help us, God, to be the people that you said that we can be, God. Help us to be the people you said we can be, God. You have given us every spiritual blessing in Christ Jesus, God. Lord, we have everything we need. We lack nothing. We lack nothing, God. And we say thank you, God. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Praise God. One more time. Give God some praise. Has he been good to you? Did he wake you up this morning? Gave you a clear mind and started you on your way? Give God some praise. Amen. This is our offertory period. Eternal God, our Father, we just come before you right now saying thank you. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are. Thank you for being God all by yourself. We love you the more in Jesus' name. Amen. Deacons and ushers can come at this time. Hallelujah.
eternal God, our Father, we just come before you saying thank you, Father. Thank you for those who gave it, those that didn't have it. Father, we ask that you bless this offering for the upkeep of your kingdom. In our darling son, Jesus' name, amen.
Good morning. Good morning, True Spirit. How's everybody today? I hope wonderful. Amen. It is time for us to acknowledge our guest. If you are a visitor, please stand and tell us a little bit about yourself. Please remain standing because we have a little gift for you as well.
Hi, I'm Stefan Harrington. This is my beautiful wife, Mahalet Harrington, and my brother, friend Sean. We were, visiting and the presence of the Lord. Amen, amen. From our great friend, Hi Smith. Thank y'all for having us.
Amen. Are there any other visitors today? Well, we at True Spirit have a saying. God loves you, we love you, and there is nothing you can do about it. We have two announcements, one from our youth department and the other for the anniversary.
Okay. So last week when I said we were in love, you all kind of looked at me like, maybe. Okay, so we're going to try again. Okay? I said we were in a committed relationship. We have been together for 1 year. Thank you. That's a long time. Okay, so I've been thinking, we're going to celebrate, right? So we're going to start at 11. We're going to have someone special come in at 11. Then we're going to have some dinner, special dinner. Then we're going to have another special time together at 3:30. Right? Right? Okay. Y'all are, I don't know. But I'm excited. So we're going to 11, dinner, 3:30. And, okay, ladies, when it's your anniversary, what do you expect? Yes, some kind of gift. That's right. Okay. So the gift we're going to give for our members, we're going to give $100 because that's a good, actually, that's kind of a cheap gift, you think about it. Okay, I'm just saying. So we're going to do $100. That's going to be our gift. All right? Are we excited? Okay. Oh, my goodness. The 17th. November 17th. I just thought y'all already knew since we were all in love and it had been a year. 17th is when we're going to celebrate our anniversary. At 3:30. Huh? What? Oh, come on. Our anniversary, us and the pastor. Okay.
Good morning. I am here to remind you of our Fall Festival on October 19th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. There will be food, games, vendors, a hayride, treasure in the trunks, crafts, Christian music, and even entertainment sponsored by One Jump Ahead. These jumpers will be jumping every 45 minutes. Please come out and help support this youth fundraiser. For those that signed up, please stop by the table to get a reminder of the time you signed up to help. Also, please donate a bag or two of candy to support the Treasure in the Trunk. Thank you for your support, and God bless you all.
Amen. Let's give her a hand. It's hard for the youth to get up there and speak in front of people. Amen. That's our Miss Bree. Amen. Can you turn your attention to the overhead? Thank you.
Good morning, True Spirit. Welcome to the first Sunday of October. It's October 6th, my birthday, and my name is Sierra. Let's get started with this week's announcements. Did you miss last week's service? You can watch services live and on demand right on our channel at TSBC Media on YouTube. Sundays are always best when they start with our Sunday school to learn more about God's Word. Classes begin at 9:30 a.m. every Sunday. If you recently joined True Spirit, we have a class just for you, and it occurs every Sunday in the Fellowship Hall starting at the same time. Then at 11 a.m., you can stick around for our Sunday worship service. We have been invited to be guests on this Friday starting at 7 p.m. at New Resurrection. They will be celebrating Mother Sola Latour's 90th birthday. Our choir will be singing, and Pastor Greer is set to bring word both that night and the following morning at Colorado Baptist Southern District Associations at 9 a.m., which will also be held at New Resurrection. Let's come out and show our support for this occasion. This Saturday, we will be holding an event called Pastor's Corner starting at 10 a.m. Registration is $10 and all pastors and ministers are invited to attend. Then next Sunday, starting at 3:30 p.m., St. John Baptist Church will be having our choir to sing and Pastor Greer as a guest speaker for their church anniversary. Let's come out and show our support for this joyous event. Looking ahead, our youth ministry will be having our Fall Harvest Festival, Chili Cook-Off, and Youth Fundraiser. This event is to be held on Saturday, October 19th, starting at 11 a.m. There will be games and treats during the Treasure in the Trunk. Also, we will have hay rides, inflatable football, basketball, and more. This event isn't just for the youth though. For the adults, you'll be able to enjoy some early holiday shopping with local vendors and food. Let's make sure to mark the date, October 19th, on our calendar to come and support our youth ministry. November is going to be a special time around True Spirit because we will be celebrating our pastor's first anniversary. This event is to be held on Sunday, November 17th, and the theme this year is Driven to Feed His Sheep with Honor. Coming from Jeremiah 3:15, the guest pastor for this event will be Pastor Dr. Jarvis Hansen from the New Nazareth Baptist Church in Chicago, Illinois. Now let's look at your week ahead. Have you been interested in expressing your love for God through dance? If so, you'd be perfect for one of our dance teams. Our Rocks of Ages meets on Mondays starting at 6:30 p.m. and the Touched by the Spirit dancers meet Saturdays starting at 11:30 a.m. right here in the sanctuary. Tuesdays are a great time to expand on the teaching from Sunday school and Sunday worship. You are invited to come to our daytime Bible study starting at 11:30 a.m. or our nighttime Bible study starting at 7 p.m. We have room for you. Are you someone that enjoys singing but haven't known where to use that talent? I got the answer, and it's in one of our various choirs. Choir rehearsal is held Wednesdays beginning at 7 p.m., and this week's rehearsal is for our youthful spirit. We look forward to having all the youth here so we can fill this choir stand. On Fridays, we help serve the community with our food pantry from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and we are always looking for more donations or volunteers. Finally, on Saturday, starting at 8 a.m., we hold our intercessory prayer right here in the sanctuary. That does it for our upcoming events. Keep up with what's going on by searching and liking us on Facebook at True Spirit Baptist Church. Also, share it with your friends. Now let's fellowship with each other for a few minutes, and remember, God loves you, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it, even if you try. Have a blessed week.
That's the kind of God we serve. Anybody glad about it? You'll never ever hold my Jesus down. Anybody glad? He lives forever. Come on, somebody help me say, death, oh, could not hold him down. He reigns victorious, and even the nails were not strong enough, yeah, to hold my Jesus down. No matter what
And the people of God said, amen. Those that know you're alive and celebrate your life, celebrate the Creator, the author, sustainer of life. 150 Psalms says, let everything that has breath praise ye the Lord. I got a portion of you that caught that. If you're glad to be alive and know that you're alive, the Bible says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I got one portion on this side. I'm still waiting on this side. Don't go by yourself. But the Bible says, rejoice. Again, I say rejoice. If you got a reason to celebrate him, let's celebrate him for who he is in your life. Amen, amen, amen. Certainly we're grateful for what God is doing and what he has done. We were grateful to be here this morning. Good to see so many of your beautiful faces and smiling. And it's also good to be back home. It's nothing like home. Sleeping in your own bed and being around your family. Amen. So I'm glad, and we're glad to be here, glad to be back. Just a few things we want to remind you of our church meeting, which is in this month, to stay according and compliance with our quarterly assignment. I know we had one in August, but we moved it, but we need to stay in compliance. So it will be this month. I believe it is on the 24th of this month at 6 o'clock. So we want you, ma'am, sir, to come and be a part of that as well. Also, all ministries, please see the finance committee so that you can get your paperwork for your budgets. All budgets must be submitted by the 31st. No exceptions. No exceptions. So if you, as they say, you snooze, you lose. If you're late, you won't get it. Amen. We're praying that God will allow us to adhere to the things that you request, but it's only happening based upon your obedience. God has truly been blessing True Spirit, not just financially, but spiritually. And for that, we can be honorable and be obedient to thank him for all that he's doing at this church. Amen. Y'all give yourselves a hand. Because the Bible tells us that obedience is better than sacrifice. So often we struggle with the sacrifice, but just be obedient. And in your obedience, you'll hear a word from the Lord. And I guarantee you, if you know him like I know him, you'll sacrifice when he tells you to. Amen. So we want you to just be obedient to what has been forth on us, given to us as a part as we move forward in 2020. I'm looking forward to the year 2020. After all we've been through this year, God is showing us that he'll make a way out of no way. So for that, I look forward for what he's going to do next year. Amen. 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 If you would like to be a part of the Christmas committee, please see Sister Joanne. She has some information if you want to be a part of that. Now, we put it out here early because we don't want to be late preparing or planning. So this is your last week to see her. Amen. Because she's meeting diligently with those that have been meeting with her, and she's put it out there. So we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to be a part of that celebration as we come together for Christmas time. Amen. Amen. Continue to pray for our families. There's a lot going on in this city and this state and all across this country. But most importantly, I want us to keep our children in prayer as they are in school, and different things are taking place in schools and outside of the schoolhouse. Ask God to keep a wedge of protection around them. Amen. This week is a busy week. We're in fellowship at least 3 times this week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We want to be a blessing to Pastor Mose as he gives honor to Mother Latour. And we want to be a blessing to St. John Baptist Church as they celebrate 141 years of service. Amen. And amen. I'm just grateful and honored to be considered to be the speaker. My friend Pastor Felder has asked. So I'm expecting True Spirit to show up. And I already know when you come, we know how to show out in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Also, let's stay prayerful for our seniors, our other members that are ill that we don't know, have knowledge of, but we know that someone has been out for a while because of some type of illness. I've spoken with Deacon Powell. He is now in Atlanta, so he's doing well. So keep him in your prayers as he makes his journey back to True Spirit and healthy and good recovery. Keep Sister Valerie in your prayers, our nurse, president of nurses. She had some surgery this week, so let's keep her in our prayers as well. Amen. Amen. I definitely want to say again to the True Spirit family that traveled to Illinois with us last week, thank you for your support. I thank you for your fellowship. Also, I know she's watching, but Sister Audrey met us in Rockford last week as well. Amen. She drove 7 hours to be with us. And she said, Pastor, I just wanted to see my family and hear some preaching. So we're grateful. And her father is working on some stuff to invite True Spirit to Ohio. All right. So I want to keep you mindful, keep your ears tentative. So when it happens, we all can play a role in being there. Amen. Amen. Third Sunday of this month, we will be having our sports team jersey Sunday. So I know we got a lot of sports fans here. I'm not going to gear it just to football. I'm going to gear it to basketball or whatever sport you have. But it is football season. Amen. So I know we got some people with some jerseys. But on third Sunday, we'll be sporting those jerseys. Now, I don't want anybody to be mad if you see me in more than one piece of 49er apparel. All right? I know we're in Bronco land, but I'm a Niners fan. Pray for me. Pray for me. Amen. Pray for me. Amen. Somebody shout out, I'm praying for the pastor. Amen. So on third Sunday, we want you to just be a part of that. Come with your favorite sports outfit. Now, I do have to say this, and I'm not trying to be funny. Please don't make your jersey your dress. You'll catch that. I told you I wasn't being funny. Somebody said, yes, I was. I hear everything. But please don't make that your dress. We want to dress appropriately in the house of God. Amen. Amen. Y'all smile a little bit. I hope I didn't rain on your parade. Amen. Amen. We want to invite you to Tuesday again, our Bible study, as we're discussing the Revelation of John. Many of you have purchased a book that's been written by William Barclay. We're talking out of the book and the Bible of Revelations. And we're talking about the apocalyptic and the apocalyptis message that's coming before John. But he's getting ready to discuss some things that the Lord has given to him for the churches. And if anyone has read Revelations, Revelation is not a dreary book or a book of doom if you know the Lord. But if you're struggling to know him and you don't know him in the pardon of your sins, then it should scare you to getting to know him, because there are some things in Revelations that should open our eyes to become better and to become relevant to what he wants us to do. Revelations is not a book of anger or horror either, but it's a book full of some praise. This word revelation in the Greek is to reveal and expound to something, but the root word is revealed. And so here it is. John has got an apocalyptic message of revelation of what the Lord wants him to share with us. And so we want you to be a part of our Bible study on Tuesday, 11:30 and 7 o'clock, as we discuss the book of John, given by John, the book of Revelations. So please, ma'am, please, sir, if you don't have the book, that means you still can come to Bible study. We have copies for you, amen? And such as Sister Sierra said, we don't discriminate, amen? Amen. We got room for you, amen? So we're grateful for that. All my cancer survivors, where you at? Just if you're a cancer survivor, if you can stand, let's stand. Now, y'all don't know when to shout. That's a shout moment. Amen. I know this is a month that we specify certain things, but I commend you because every day you're a survivor. You are a survivor. The songwriter said it could have been me. Could have even been you too. But I'm grateful that God has spared our lives to testify. It's that I am a living testimony. Amen. So we just want to keep you lifted up in prayer. Again, continue to pray for True Spirit. Continue to pray for all the churches in this city, in this community, and outside of this country. And most importantly, we want to be obedient to the word. Let's pray for our president. Amen. The Bible tells us that we should pray for those that's in authority in high places. We must keep him in our prayers because we're living on a time not only of impeachment, but we're living in a moment of ignorance. And because of the ignorance, many are perishing. Nehemiah 4 says, my people perish because of the lack of knowledge. So let's keep everyone lifted up in prayer. Amen. Let's give this mass choir a hand as they come again and render selection. Oh, y'all can do better than that. Amen. Let's see.
Worship Him. Give my God the glory. Give my God the praise. Worship Him. Worship Him. Come, let us worship the Lord. 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 Let's give Him the
Amen. Let's give them another hand. God and Father, it's preaching time. Father, songs have been sung, gifts have been given. And now, God, we ask that you would be the giving God that you've always been, the gracious and great God, and give us some more crumbs from the Master's table. That we here, just a few of your people, ask that you would feed us until we want no more. Let me decrease. Let you increase in me, hide me behind the throne. Let them see your image upon me, hear your voice through me. And let them see something or hear something in your message that will ask, what must I do to be saved? So now, God, I ask that you let this word fall on fertile soil and disrupt stony ground. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Oh, Lord, I praise you, give you all glory and adoration because you're my strength. And Lord, I love you because you're my Redeemer. If you're truly blessed, come on, let's celebrate Jesus. God is worthy to be praised. Lord, whatever you're doing this season, please don't do it without me. Don't do it without me. Y'all know that song? Help me sing that. Lord, whatever you're doing in this Please don't do it without me. Don't do it without me. If you're blessing, Lord, if you're blessing in this season, please don't do it without me. Oh Lord, don't do it without me. If you're healing, Lord, if you're healing, Father, don't heal without me. Lord, don't heal without me. Lord, if you're blessing in this season, please don't do it without me. No, don't do it without me. Lord, if you're blessing in this season, please don't do it without me. Don't do it without me. This is my last one. Let me get out your way. Lord, if you're loving in this season, please don't do it without me. Can you slip your hand up? Don't do it without me. I want y'all to say that with me with no music. Lord, if you love, y'all sound like y'all in love with Jesus. Please don't do it without me. Oh Lord, don't do it without me. Father, whatever you're doing this season, don't do it without me. If you're healing, blessing, and loving as you always are, don't do it without me. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't want the Lord to pass me by. No, you ain't looked at your neighbor. Tell him, neighbor, I don't want the Lord to pass me by. Come on, let's celebrate Jesus one more time. With your manuals of life, if you would turn to Psalms 51. Psalm 51. With your manuals of life, all those that are able to stand. We stand in reverence and respect to the word of God. Psalm 51. We're going to jump right to verse 14. If you have it, say amen. If you're still looking, shout out Bible study. We got room for you. We don't discriminate. And it reads, deliver me from blood guiltiness, O God, thou God of my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud of thy righteousness. O Lord, open thy mouth, my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. For thou desirest not sacrifice, else would I give it. Thou delightest not in burnt offerings. The sacrifice of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. O God, thou wilt not despise. That concludes our reading. You may be seated. If you would help me just for a few anointed moments to preach on the subject, the topic, broken into being a worshiper. Broken into being a worshiper. Broken into being a worshiper. Psalm 51 is a fascinating account of how David was king of Israel, but he sinned against God. The psalm is considered a penitent psalm where one is showing or feeling sorrow and some type of regret for having done something wrong. Now, we all can give account to some of David's most memorable sins. How he committed adultery, how he had the same woman's husband killed, but yet he continued to reign as king. But we never look at how he turned away from God. Notice here in this passage, if you look, for all my Bible scholars, if you look at the voice tone and the language of how David's behavior changes, we catch him towards the end of his confessions. And he's making a request. David turns to seek God for forgiveness, and he comes to him as a broken person, simply asking God to restore the relationship they enjoy together. Now, my brothers and sisters, if you know anything about David, if you happen to look during your spare time this week, 2 Samuel chapter 12, David encountered with Nathan, who had came to reprimand him for something he had done. He encountered a reprimanding from Nathan because of what he had done with Bathsheba. And throughout the conversation in 2 Samuel chapter 12, David was addressed on his behavior, but he was also informing Nathan, and Nathan informed him that God forgave him. So here we are, where David desires to become more and more of an active worshiper again. But he had to put up some things. And he had to put some things in life in perspective as he went through his penitent moment. And we all should have a penitent moment. Y'all with me this morning? Where it causes us to be the desire to be back in good graces with God. I mean, I don't know if anybody here can really be a witness that you know you ain't always been saved. You've wronged some people. You've wronged some people just enough to get what you want. And you went against the word of God, a penitent moment that causes you to confess. For the Bible declares that if you confess, and he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and cleanse us of all unrighteousness. That if you confess of your sins to one another and pray for one another, that you may be healed. That if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That if you confess, he will obtain mercy. That if you confess, you can receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. Confession where, Lord, everything I've done ain't always been right. In fact, Lord, I got some secret of confessions on the usher level, part 1 and 2. There's been some things that went on in my life that I haven't walked in godliness. I haven't walked upright. I haven't always talked the way I should be talking. I haven't always shook everybody's hand or even told them I love them. Lord, this is my confession, because I ain't always paid my tithes. I ain't always came to church in the right condition, in the right mindset. But God, I'm thankful that while I was in my mess, you didn't. I'm preaching, and some of y'all looking at me like you're mad. That you didn't leave your hands off of me, but you put them upon me. And by your stripes, I shall be healed. I know there's some things I haven't done right. But Lord, now I'm at a point in my life where you had to break me to use me. That's a shout right there before I even take the text. There ought to be at least 2 witnesses that can say, I'm glad that he broke me so that he can use me. Watch this. That ought to bring the whole house to the feet, because God broke you to use you appropriately. And that is to become worshipers and doers of his word. Y'all with me this morning? And so here it is. David shows us what takes place when he had been broken to worship. And there were some things that I saw as I was abstracting the message out of this text. One thing he shows us is that there should be a desire for deep cleansing. Right there in verse 10, he talks about creating me a clean heart, oh God, and renew a right spirit. But watch this. If you've been reading Psalms, verse 7, he makes the same request, but he asks God to spray some stuff on me. Put something on me that make me smell right. Y'all missed that. I mean, I don't want no Gucci cologne. I don't want no Gucci black cologne. I don't want no white diamonds. I want something to be sprayed upon me that can straighten me out. I'm talking cheap stuff. I need some stuff that will straighten me up. And watch this, watch this, watch this. Notice he didn't make the request for his old heart to exist. He wanted a new heart. It's right there in verse 10. And what we need to understand is that God is taking you through this season so that he can put some newness on you. Y'all ain't shouting with me even already. Somebody should be glad that God is allowing you to experience what you are experiencing, because God has some new stuff in store. So what, you didn't get the job you really wanted? God has a bigger plan. So what, you didn't get the house, the car, or even the raise that you had? God has a bigger plan, because when God looks at his people, he has a plan for you even before you were born. I wish I was talking to some people that know what it feels like to be broken. You had to rob Peter to pay Paul. That's physical. But when your spirit has been broken, something just don't sit right on the inside. Lord, why? Because I need to change your heart. I need to put the right spirit in you. And somebody should be slipping up that hand and say, I'm so glad that Jesus saw something in me. There's a deep cleansing that need to take place, because clearly David is stating that the heart ain't right. And if the heart ain't right, the spirit ain't right. Let me talk to you sanctified folk. You Bible told us, scripture quotas, you can't have a right spirit but still act ignorant. You can't have a God heart and have an evil spirit. We all know oil and water don't mix. You can't cuss and shout at the same time. And sometimes we need to be broken so God can show you the errors of your ways. You might not look at Sister Sally the right way, but if your heart is right, you'll talk to her the right way. You might not like Deacon so-and-so or Reverend so-and-so, but if your spirit is right, you know you got to get it right before God comes back to get you. Look at somebody say deep cleansing. And I found out this, that when you get a deep cleansing from God, lava can't help you like zest can. Zest can make you zestful and clean. Got to have a deep cleansing, but here it is. David also says you have to request to stay in his eyesight. Look at your Bible, verse 11. We're gonna do a little Christian walk, not crip, but Christian walk. To verse 14. Look at verse 11. He says it clearly. Cast me not away from thy presence. Watch this. Many of us don't understand. And I hate to be a bearer of bad news. Sometimes you have to be cast out of the eyesight of God to appreciate who he is. You don't miss a good thing until I wish I had some lovers in the house. You ain't always been walking the right way. In fact, some of us are illegitimate. And some of us have had some illegitimate relationships. But in some of those illegitimate relationships, we found some areas of love that we still hold on to. Y'all just missed that. And when you are with God, you have to hold on to true and dynamic love. So then, therefore, if you love me like you did, and you treat me like you did, Lord, I don't want to lose what you have for me. You don't want to be out of the eyesight of God. He says, don't let me be out of your presence. Because if I'm out of your presence, guess what? All kinds of stress and drama will come around me. And not only will it come around me, it will consume me for who I am. I'm a strong believer that the reason why churches have failed to become true worshipers is because the membership has fell out of the eyesight of discipleship. We know the disciples, they were ones that followed God. So if you're a disciple, that means you want to stay close to God. And let me tell you the next piece to this before I get to the text. Not only do you want to lose the eyesight, but he says you don't want to lose your power. It's right there in verse 11 that here it is that now I don't want you to take your Holy Spirit from me. And that's the very reason why we can't get nowhere, because we don't have no power. I know some people say, well, I didn't come to church to be beat up, but the truth is the truth. And the Bible says he who the Son has set free is free. And so sometimes you have to accept the truth for reality that, Lord, my power ain't in me, but it's in you. So that's why I'm praying to you, Lord, that if you keep me in your presence, I know what power should walk right. I know how power should look. And truth be told, can I share something with you? We got to stop looking like we've been dunked in lemon juice all day. Some of us got a reason to be here. You should want to be in the house, because when it took for you to get here this week, you got a reason to lift up your hands, a reason to shout and say, God, I'm grateful that you kept grace and mercy surrounded. I wish I had some believers that could just shout with me for about 2 seconds. That could say, I'm so glad that I still have power to bless my soul, power to heal my children, power to speak good things into my own life. How many know sometimes you got to encourage yourself? I found out that when you have the power of Jesus, watch this, people always want to know how you can be here. That's a point right there. And what you need to grab is this. When God is working on you, and he's trying to break you, he's trying to use you, watch this, as a faith bush. Can I help you right here? A faith bush, that's fresh. That just came to me. It didn't even, just looking in some of your eyes. We need to have some true faith bushes where they can see faith when they don't understand it. I mean, I don't know if anybody here ever had $2, but your bill was $25. You had to ride to work on a quarter tank of gas all week, and you had to worry about how you was going to put food on the table. The doctor diagnosed you with cancer, but yet you're still walking. The doctor told you high blood pressure is over the roof, but yet you're still eating pig feet, pinto beans, and salt pork. The doctor said diabetes numbers are high, but you still got your right mind. That's faith. And you need to be a bush of faith that though you don't see it, I can believe it. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Look at somebody and say, be a faith bush. Be a faith bush. It's don't cast me out. Don't let me lose my power. Because in times like these, I need some power. I mean, can y'all just be honest with your boy? Do you need power today? Y'all ain't tracking with me. I mean, I need some power. So then now I won't look like I've lost all my voltage. I won't look dim. In fact, I'll be a light in somebody's dark place. But watch this. David says too, in verse 13, you have to become a servant and a visible believer. Because he says, then I will teach transgressors thy way, and sinners shall be converted unto thee. Is that in your Bible? I'm walking you through the Bible. This ain't makeup. This is walking through the Bible. And watch this. That word transgressors are those that have violated or overstepped boundaries. So here it is. Lord, if you told me to stay in your eyesight, I don't want to lose it. Lord, you told me I need deep cleansing. Why would you want me to be a servant and a visible believer? Because the enemy always tried to overstep bounds. Let me help you. Let's go this route. The enemy don't mess with evil people. The enemy always messes with God's people. And if you're not a true worshiper, then the enemy ain't gonna mess with you. Y'all help me this morning. But if you're a true worshiper, that's why he gotta mess with you, because you got some things in line that he wanna get off base. And when you are a true servant and worshiper of God, you can tell him, now you done crossed the line. Touch not my anointed and do my prophet no harm, because God is with me. God in front, Jesus in back, the Holy Spirit over me, grace and mercy around me. I am divinely protected. Yeah. So here it is. Let me get to the text. So then here's the question. So then what do I do to become, or what has happened for me to become a worshiper? I'm glad you asked me that in your halftime voice. Here it is. David says the first thing is you have to be, it's because you're being broken in spirit. Don't allow small ambition to interfere with your spiritual needs. Learn to give yourself to God so he can have control of what you are to become. He will not use people effectively until we are broken. When you've been broken, then he will begin to show you the plans that he has for your life. I wish I had some people that didn't slip back to the potter's house. I'm at the potter's house because I need to be back on the wheel. In fact, the Bible says we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. You might not be eating Spam or sardines for breakfast, but there's been a time in your life where you know you ain't even been worthy of even that good eating. But if I can get two, I'll make three that can say, Reverend, I'm glad that God got me back in the potter's house. Because there's some things in the first making that had me all cracked up on the inside. I was cracked up and I wasn't smoking no real dope. My spirit was messed up and vexed, all because of what somebody done said, what they done did. But I thank God that he laid his hands on me. Because can't nobody, when you at the potter's house, do you like Jesus? And can I get a witness that can testify? Can't nobody love me like the Lord. So here it is. He begins to show plans for you. And in order to experience the worship experience, breaking must take place. He has to break your attitude, what you think, and what you feel. Watch this. David suggests in the text that we must admit of the blood guiltiness. That's right there in verse 14. You got to admit of the blood guiltiness. Admit in the Greek, idosos, meaning you must have some access, which indicates the only way you can give access to admitting is through a consistent and valid, concise prayer life. Y'all with me? In order for God to use you, you got to be able to be a prayer warrior or have a consistent and concise prayer life. That through prayer, watch this, it's the access to break down our arrogance, which has become our character. What I struggle with Christians is that we have become so arrogant in our walk, arrogant in our ways, that our spirit is tainted in arrogantness. You think you better than somebody. And truth be told, there are people that come to church think they're better than the person they sit next to. Can I just give a reality talk? I'm not Steve Harvey, but I'm just putting it like this. Some people need to understand the reason why you're struggling the way you're struggling is because you're too arrogant through your pain. And I've discovered this, that if you humble yourself in your pain, in your arrogance, you'll find your anointing. Y'all just missed that. Was not David the anointed one? But he was tending to the sheep. What does the sheep do? They get dirty and nasty. But if you're humble while you're going through your struggle, you'll find out that God had a special anointing on your life. So now you can walk with some purpose. But you got to give them some access. And the problem has become, watch this, not only the arrogance, but when your spirit is broken, you don't have time to be arrogant. I mean, I guess I'm the only one that ever been through something. Because Sunday after Sunday, I notice that only a handful of people know how to praise. And if the record was to record and reflect our actions, then that would verily, I would say, he said, verily, verily, I say unto you. That means that would clearly promote or validate the fact that's why worship is not effective in any type of denomination. And so therefore, he's telling us we're not praying enough. You got to pray beyond pain. You got to pray even when it's good. Lord, I don't know why you keep blessing me, but I'm grateful you blessing me. Lord, I don't know why you're taking me through, but Lord, I know you wouldn't bring me this far to leave me. And so here it is. When your spirit is broken, it's to get rid of your arrogance. But watch this. Then you would have a routine to seek him on a daily basis. Come here, David. 63 says, O God, thou art my God, early will I seek thee. My soul thirsts for thee. My flesh longs for thee in dry and thirsty places. And there's just not enough people that will lay their arrogance down and be real worshipers. God is asking us, are you willing to worship no matter where you are? Because had it not been God on you, you know that you wouldn't have made it through. There was a story about two horseback riders. They would race, and one day they got together, and one of the riders said, I noticed you've never won a race. You never won a race, but at the end of the race, people always cheering you on. But you lost. He said, your horse is old. And if he could speak, he would tell you to take him out of his miseries. He said, but you walk and you got a gallop about yourself at the end of the race. The other horseback rider said, first of all, let me clear something up. It's not always winning the race. It's just good to be able to be in the race. The other thing he said was, yes, I haven't won a race. I'm glad to be in the race. And I talk to my horse on a regular basis. And his spirit tells me, I'm so glad that even though I'm no good to others, you still found time to ride me. And the reason why I gallop with you on my back as if I'm a winner, because when I was down and out, you didn't put me to the slaughter. In fact, I'll gallop with you on my back because you praise me in the presence of other winners. So now those that lose know what a winner is really about. And somebody should be shouting that God rode you all through all the races and the marathons, that he broke some spirits. He broke some mindsets that had he not rode me when he did, I know I should be dead somewhere sleeping in my grave. I wish I had some good riders that said, I'm so glad wherever I go, I can celebrate Jesus because he wrote me to get me where I am. He wrote me to get me to thinking the way I am. In fact, he wrote me right into my blessing. Yeah, you can't be ashamed to worship him when you're going through your brokenness, because while you're going through your brokenness, God is trying to show you something. He's saying your spirit has to be broken so I can use you as a prize. And some folk don't understand. When you've been touched by the master, you become a master's piece. Brother Will, can I just get a little more love in the mind of this? I'm talking to myself, because there are many masterpieces you just ain't been wiped off yet. And you need to celebrate him while you can, because when he wiped the dust away, somebody can shout, because look where the Lord has brought me from. Brought me out of darkness into the marvelous light. I'm so glad that God saw fit to make me a masterpiece, so now I can shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine all in my home, on my job, even in the church. Just wipe me off and watch me shine. Do it. Let me hurry up. So you're being broken in spirit, but the second thing, you're being broken of self. Verse 15, he tells us we've been broken of self. Oh Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. If we humble ourselves through the breaking, then watch this. You should humble yourself enough to be broken over your sins. That's when you rid yourself of everything that can separate you from being in God's presence. David suggests that he will use his mouth to show praise, but we need to be broken of selfishness first. Let me help you, those with a split tongue. The tongue is dangerous. In fact, it was somebody's tongue that got you in the state that you're in right now. I want y'all to hold on to that thought. But it was somebody's tongue to make you feel broken. So then now you blame everybody but yourself for receiving for what the tongue has said. Now let me talk to you split tongue people. You know, most things that have split tongues are like serpents. And I only know of really one family that have split tongues. Not dragons, but we talking snakes. God would not allow you to even put a praise or worship in the atmosphere if you have a split tongue. Let me put it like this. You can't tell me you love me today and talk about me tonight. You can't say you got my back, but when it's time to speak up, you silent. But then the minute it goes out, you talking about me behind my back. That's a split tongue. But let me help you a little more. You can't say that you have my best interest in helping me, but yet you have to get on Instagram, Facebook, and all type of hellish machines to tell somebody that you helped somebody that was less fortunate. Now let me help you, since y'all don't want to shout on that part. The reason why somebody's tongue got you here in this position is because some of us been connected to some righteous prayer warriors. And in the process of the prayer, the Bible says the prayers of the righteous availeth much. I've never seen his seed begging for bread. So that tells me I have a reason to shout, because some people put their tongue on me. So now that you got your tongue on me, I'm celebrating because God elevated me with your tongue. He'll prepare a table in the presence of my enemies. That means he's going to bless me. Why you got your split tongue out talking about me? So the more you talk, now he's going to make my enemies my footstools. And so now I'm stepping in the name of love. Not in a physical love, but a spiritual sense. That it was Jesus that paid the price. He went down to hell, got the keys back, so I can have life. I wish I had some people that can say, I'm glad they talked about me. They called me everything but a child of God. But God! Somebody need to let it go right now. They put their tongue on you all your life. You got to give them something good to talk about. But when I woke up this morning, I didn't have no doubt that the Lord, even though you said I wasn't supposed to be here, God said he has plans for me. In fact, I had it before you were born. And for that, I could celebrate 150 Psalms. Just says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. Let me hurry up. When the Lord allows you to experience being broken of yourself, so then now you will not get entangled in selfishness. And there's times where we've gotten entangled in selfishness and now we can't serve appropriately. And because of serving our ego, we cannot draw no one to Christ. Notice what David said in the text. He says, I open my lips and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. How can you praise yourself and expect people to come to God? John 5 says it like this. If I alone bear witness about myself, then my testimony is not deemed true. That's the Bible. And can I just be honest? We need to stop testifying in church. Stop testifying, because here it is. Verse 16 and 17, David said, you didn't desire my sacrifice or my burnt offerings, but you desired my spirit to be broken. God wants us to be sufficient so he can make us self-sufficient. Somebody saying, well, how can we be self-sufficient without having an ego? But he wants us to be self-sufficient because he has to have enough adequate saints to represent the kingdom. And if it's all about you, you're not representing the kingdom. But when you have been broken, then people can truly see the real you. When you're going through, you got to stop lying and saying, I'm all right. I'm going through. When people ask you, how you doing? Stop lying, test the lie and saying, I'm blessed and highly favored. Because you're not highly favored. The Bible says only one is highly favored, and that's she that bore Jesus. But when you're going through, don't be afraid to tell somebody, I'm going through, but the Lord is on my side. In fact, I'm going through so much now that if I just keep pressing towards the mark of the prize of the high calling, which is in Jesus, I know soon and very soon I'm going to meet the King. In fact, I may not be feeling good today, but baby, I'm here. Because long as blood is running through my veins, I have activities of my, I'm preaching and you ain't saying nothing, activities of my lips, I can come to the house and be grateful that God has gave me the strength. But if I can get two, I'll make three that can say, Reverend, I can testify. I ain't always walked in the best of health, but I thank God he didn't let me die. In fact, I just got diagnosis last week, but yet I'm still alive. I wish I had some victory survivors that could say, I got the VICTORY. I got the victory through health, through pain, through struggle, because God is always by my side. Yeah. To be honest and press your way through. So then, here it is, the reason you've been broken into being a worshiper. It's because he wants to draw you closer to him. Text says he have to have a broken and contrite heart. Why? Why? Somebody say why. Why would he want us to be broken and have a contrite heart? I struggle with that. Because, Lord, you told me that if I got on your side, you never leave me nor forsake me. You told me that if I serve you, it's going to pay off after a while. You told me with your stripes I'll be healed. So why would you want me to be broken? Because he said, it's when you're broken is when I can get your best praise. I caught that. I get that. But sometimes I just don't feel like praising. Sometimes I just want to unprophetically act in an undivine way. I wish I had some real Peters in the house. Sometimes I just want to act outside of my own self. Doc Turner, sometimes I just want to act Anthony. Because I know Anthony feels a little better when Anthony get loose. Why would you want me to be broken? Why would you want me to have a messed up, broken heart but a contrite spirit? You said you get the best praise out, but I praise you when you give me good stuff. But the type of praise he said I want is the praise that lets you know I'm a deliverer. Watch this. David experienced 3 traumatic moments in his life. One was when he had to act crazy to get out of the presence of the kings. That's in Samuel. Then the moment he had the woman's husband killed. And then if you read 2 Samuel chapter 12, his child died. But why do you want me to be broken and my heart to be contrite? Because the Bible says in 2 Samuel chapter 12, David stayed on his face and he prayed. Because he didn't want to believe that his child was dead. But the servants told him he was dead. He didn't want to believe it at first. Then finally, when he came to his senses, he then asked, is my child dead? They said yes. The Bible says David got up then. I wish I had some Bible readers. It said he washed himself off. Then he anointed himself. That means he did have some oil in his presence. Then the Bible says, and he went to the house of the Lord. And then finally he worshiped. You just missed that. Why Lord, because I can get the best praise out of you when you're going through. But then I need to wash some stuff off of you while you're going through your struggle. And then I want you to remember that you've always been anointed because you was Jesse's baby boy. You was the one that was in the pen with the sheep. You was the one that I sent for in the first place. So now that you washed yourself, anointed yourself, and brought yourself to the house of God, now you worship me. The Bible says then David got with his family, sat down and ate a good meal. Watch this. Some things that happen in your life happen to draw you to church. And while you at church, you should shout because what you went through, God kept his hands on you while you went through it. You may not have lost a son or a daughter, but you lost a loved one. And through the tragic, and the trauma, God kept his hands of protection. I wish I had some believers that could say the reason why I worship is because God wants to remind me that I am anointed. And the reason why I'm anointed, because he already had the plan for me before I went through it. I had to go through it to realize the master's plan. Some of y'all will catch that later. Your spirit, he wants to use you for a reason. So then now you can understand this third point. The third point is now you're being broken to surrender. And now, when you're broken to surrender, you remember the wheels, the four wheels. Surrender to the will of God for your life. Surrender to the work of God for your lives. And then the wonder of working in our lives. And the worship of God for our lives. Paul says it like this in Philippians 3. That I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being made comparable unto his death, if by any means I might attain unto the resurrection of his death. So then if I surrender, I have a reason to press forward because there's a prize waiting for me. If I don't surrender, then I'll never receive what he has for me. And I don't know if anybody here come to church sometime looking for something, but then you leave out the same way you came in. That's because you didn't surrender some stuff before you came in. Let me help you. Some of that stuff that's going on at your house, you got to leave it at your house. Because sometimes you come to church and instead of worship, you want to tell somebody your worldly business. And there's some things that go on in the church that you have to come to church to show the person that's happening in the church that it did not stop you from coming to church. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of God. Why? Because I got to make some believers out of some folk that said I wasn't going to make it, that gave up on me a long time ago. I wish I had some survivors that could say, I come to worship God, because the Bible says they that worship him must worship him in spirit. So God is in the blessing business. He's in the business of using broken folk. Jesus said it in Luke chapter 4 that he came to mend the broken heart. But then he says, the psalmist says that God does not want a sacrifice of burnt offerings. Because when you give a sacrifice of a burnt offering, you're just giving away something. But when you worship, that means you're digging way down on the inside to give him your best. The sacrifice pleasing to God is a broken spirit. And the text says, then God don't despise a broken and humble heart. He receives all those that come in brokenness. So in order to be a worshiper, then we must first be broken. For when we've experienced the brokenness, we will see that God has always been with us. But we will see that God is all we have. So God is then saying that now when you see that I'm all that you have, God then says, now you'll know that I'm all that you need. And then he says, now I'm all that you should ever want. So then now your worship becomes a blessed worship. So then now he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for there shall be comfort. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteous sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when ye shall be rivaled, you be persecuted, you shall be called all manner of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Rejoice, be exceedingly glad, because great is your reward in heaven. And I just wonder, is there anybody here that can say I'm a worshiper? Not only because, but I'm a worshiper because I'm blessed. In fact, I'm blessed going in, and I've been blessed coming out of the city. Look at somebody and say, I'm glad to be blessed. So, as I hasten to my close, got to let y'all go. My time has been far spent by the signs of the dead weight. I've discovered that you can't preach happiness until the Christians. Because if the Lord's been good to you, I don't have to tell you how good he's been. In fact, there should be at least 5 folk that can witness to the fact that I have felt broken in this walk of mine. I didn't know which way to go, but yet and still I've made my way to be in his presence. In fact, there's some that can say a potter saw a vessel that was broken by the wind and rain, and he sought with so much compassion to make it all over again. Somebody this morning can say, I was the vessel that no one that was good. I cried unto the Lord, Lord, you the potter, and I am the clay. Ain't the Lord all right? Make me over again. Are you praying with me? Then God picked up the pieces of my broken life. That day he made me a new vessel. I am revived, and he revived my soul again. And I want you to know that if you're broken and scattered by the storms of life, God is trying to tell you something, that you got to give your best while you still can. I'm trying to pull out all that I put in you to let the world know that you're serving a living God, one who died, but yet he still live again. And I got a question I got to ask you. Is there anybody here that can testify? I feel broken. I've been down and out, but I'm not through, because I know God, he's not through with me yet. Can I get a witness that can testify and say, Reverend, I was the broken vessel, but God kept his hands of restoration on me. I was the broken vessel, but God kept his hands of restoring my soul. But God, I was the one that was a broken vessel, but God, he let me live again. I was the one that was broken from head to toe, from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, back down to my feet. But God made me whole again. Is there anybody here that can testify that said, when I was broken, the part I enjoy is that God was once broken. He was broken. He was wounded for my transgressions. He was bruised for my iniquities. The chastisement of peace was upon him, but by his stripes he told me, while I'm going through, you shall be healed. Is there anybody here that can be a witness and testify that I'm glad he broke me, because now I'm a better worshiper. I can lift my hands and be for real. Oh, shucks, I done got happy. I can lift my hands and tell the Lord, thank you. I can lift my hands and tell him, I know I've been born again. The reason why I'm glad that I was the broken vessel, we had so much in common. The reason why is because one Friday he went on the cross as a broken vessel to save the sin and the lost. He died, didn't he die? From the 6th to the 9th hour, he hung there. The sun refused to shine. The moon dripped down in blood. The Bible said he dropped his head in the locks of his shoulders. He died. He was broken. But before he was broken, he said, my God, my God, my God, my God, my God, why is thou forsaken me? How many know when you're broken, you always ask why? Why me? Why, Lord? Why me? Why did you forsake me? The Bible said he hung there from the 6th to the 9th hour. The record record, they buried him before lunch. The Bible said he got up before breakfast. And that tells me he died. But on Thursday morning, he got up with power and heaven and earth in his hands. Power to walk right. Power to shout right. Power to worship right. Why? Because when I was broken, I didn't die, but he raised me back up again. We are saints that have just been sinners who have fallen, but yet God has let us rise again. I got a question I want to ask you this morning. Ain't he all right? Have you tried him? Have you been broken and found out that God will? Won't he do it? Say yes. Can I get one to help me close this thing? Stand to your feet. If you know he blessed you, if he kept you in your broken state, put your hand on your hip, let your backbone slip, and say, I'm so glad that he broke me when he did. So now I know, be not dismayed, whatever betide, God will, God will, God will, God will, God will, God will, God will make a way out of no way. Help me one more time. Put your hand by your ear and say, God will, God will. Won't he do it? Say yes, say yes, say yes, yeah. Just touch two people and say, I was broken to worship. I was broken to worship. Just touch two people and tell them I was broken to worship. I was broken to worship. We've been made into it for a night, but my worship got joy. Joy in the morning, joy in the noonday, joy in the midnight hour. Because God did not give me the spirit of fear. God did not create me to worry. He did not create me to fear, but he created me to worship. And they that worship must worship in spirit and in truth. Do you got a reason to say thank you? Do you got a reason to shout his name? Jesus, Jesus. Broken to worship. Been broken.